the Go Berserk with Email podcast with Navy nuclear engineer turned email software developer, Troy Broussard. So calm.
I'm pissed off, but I'm telling this because I am teaching you how to think differently and how to test differently.
So patient.
And Ben, that's put $500,000 into this company too, is being told that nobody can find the goddamn bug.
So charitable.
I'm going to start paying bounties every time somebody finds a bug. We're going to deduct $10 for that week.
So trusting.
Do not assume that anything works. Assume that nothing works.
And so sweet, it makes sugar taste just like salt.
I want to play into the sexiness of marketing automation, but I also want to slap the complexity of it.
The Go Berserk with Email podcast begins now.
We're back again. You think anybody's listening, Troy? Well, let's hope so. Or, I like you and all, but just hanging with you here ain't all that. Well, thank you. That's such a compliment. Well, the least we could do is have some fun, right, man? So what do you have for us today? I wanted to kind of talk to where all of this started with BerserkerMail. And it really goes back to my days with a competitor. And I'm not going to name names because we're not playing games here. But I started out as an automation software guy in that competitive space. And I wrote a best-selling book in the subject and all of that. And one of the things that really differentiated me and the software company that I built and everything around that was all about best practices. And I would be hired and brought in to consult with teams, entire sales forces and organizations, and spend a weekend and train them and go over all of the best practices of how to use the software, the best practices that they should be setting up for their email, and technical best practices with the software and configuration and all of this stuff. And I got to feeling like I was in Groundhog's Day. Because I would do the same thing over and over and over again, and sometimes for the same company. I had one company that paid me 4 different times to come in and do the same training, retrain their staff, because they had a poor management and they kept losing their staff and cycling through their staff, thinking that it was cheaper to hire cheaper staff than to actually invest in their people. And so they just invested in me instead, which is fine. Hey, I'll cash the checks. But it was really, really frustrating because here I was teaching the same best practices over and over and over again. And as new employees would come in, they would need to be trained on it. And so with every iteration, I would go deeper down the rabbit hole. And that rabbit hole started out as, online training and courses, to documentation, to books, to consulting, to group coaching, all of those things. But it was all just an extension of teaching and reinforcing the best practices, the best way of doing something. And when Ben and I sat down and started talking about BerserkerMail, which of course was over some wine in Napa Valley, kicking it and relaxing. And that's pretty much how the company came to be over a few, I don't know how much we had. We had some wine. Let's just leave it at that. And when we really started getting down into this, I was adamant about certain things and Ben was adamant about certain things. And we often call BerserkerMail, which is kind of reddish orange in the stark logo and branding, right? We often call it our redheaded bastard stepchild because, it's half of Ben's personality and half of my personality. And the graphic of the Berserker is just absolutely perfect. We jokingly say it's the Ben Settle, Troy Broussard love child. That's what it would look like, right? And no, we're both very heterosexual. Okay. So we're not going any games here, but that BerserkerMail is our child. And it has 50% of his DNA and it has 50% of my DNA. And he came from the caveman simplicity side of things, which I use that word in a good way. It's a derogatory word, but I still use it in a good way. And Ben admittedly refers to himself as a technology caveman. So it's okay. He's not going to get mad at me and block the podcast over it. But he'll probably mock me and troll me in some emails. For sure. Oh, yeah. Okay. what's to be expected. But for me, I laid down the gauntlet at building in best practices into the platform so that I didn't have to teach them. I didn't have to train them. I just enforced them automatically within the software itself.
How do you do that? How do you mean?
So every email platform out there, right, has tagging to some degree, any contemporary email system, right? So you have this concept of a tag. Well, most platforms, not all, some of them are more intelligent than others, but most platforms, and the most popular ones that I used back in the day, would allow you to create duplicate tag names. And they would allow you to not categorize the tags. So you could have a tag that was click the link, and you could have that same tag, click the link, used 5 different times, and it could be in 5 different campaigns, and you wouldn't know what the heck you were looking at. And so I would have to teach a best practice to somebody to say, never use a duplicate tag name, right?
Duh.
Always use unique tag names. Use this prefix for your campaign prefix on your tag so that that campaign is associated with that tag and people know where to find it, and it's going to make supporting it. And I teach this concept of self-documenting documentation, where you adhere to certain standards like prefixes and naming conventions, and it documents for you. You don't have to go create some 40-page SOP documentation. You can just adhere to best standards and practices, and you have a self-documenting system, right? And so I would have to develop all kinds of workarounds and teachings about how to organize tags. Now, categories are another thing. Most email platforms will allow you to categorize tags. So there'll be a category and then the tag name. So it might be like webinar might be the category, and then attended might be the tag name, right? And so you have this kind of ability to classify stuff. But most of the platforms that do that, they don't enforce any rules on it. And so you get this willy-nilly, random stuff. If one person does it one way and another person does it another way, you just get this mess of spaghetti code from 5 or 6 different people that have worked over it over the 5 or 6 different years. And one person always used tags with categories. The other person never used categories. One person never used duplicate names and used prefixes. The other person never did, et cetera, et cetera. So we build all of that in as a best practice right within the platform, right? We don't give you the chance to screw it up. So as an example, you go to create a tag. It doesn't allow you to create a duplicate tag. It prevents that error. I don't need to train you to say, don't do this mistake. I can just design the system around preventing the mistake. I can enforce that you have to categorize your tags so that they are clean and easily self-documenting in the system from the beginning, right? And these are just a couple of examples, but tagging, there's a lot of best practices around tagging. One of them that is another one really worth mentioning that we use all the time is, tags can be extremely powerful and dangerous at the same time.
How so?
Yeah, you make one mistake, you apply one wrong tag, and you may not be aware of it. The person that applies it may be an outsourcer or have access to your system and they're doing some other task, and they accidentally batch apply this tag to 50 people. And that tag is an automation trigger, and it launches this person into a campaign and sends them off 50 emails over the next 50 days times 50 people, making you look 250 times stupider at the end of the deal. Right? Which I always tell people, as a software engineer, our first job is to not make our customers look stupid. That's our first job. And the software should always make somebody feel empowered and never make them feel stupid, wondering with the interface, what am I supposed to do? How do I do this? A confusing interface makes the user feel stupid. An intuitive interface makes the user feel empowered, right? And when the system makes mistakes like that or causes you to make mistakes, that can be really, really dangerous to your business. So again, best practices. So what do? Well, instead of just showing a little colored tag, we indicate whether that tag is used in an automation or not. And so the tag will have a little lightning bolt image superimposed over it if it's used to kick off automation. If that tag stops a sequence, stops an email campaign sequence, then it has a little stop sign indicated on it. So anywhere in the platform, whenever you select or search or browse tags and go to apply a tag, the moment you see it, you're like, whoa, that's got a lightning bolt on it. I'm about ready to kick off some crazy automation. I better go double check I'm doing the right thing. So it's a visual cue, and it's an empowerment of the design of the platform to make you not look stupid. And that is just one of about 399,000 different little minor things that we do inside of BerserkerMail, from best practices. And the fact that I have so much iteration and history in marketing automation that I can kind of see the matrix on the stuff that people maybe are only doing for the 200th time, and I've done it 200,000 times in the last couple of decades. And so I can kind of see the matrix on some of this stuff. And so all of the things that I used to design training for and do speaking engagements and consulting and all this, now I just solve 90% of that by building it in to the platform itself, because it's my platform.
Sounds like you're putting yourself out of work, brother. But I hear you describe it, though. I never thought of best practices this way, but it reminds me of going bowling with the kid, right? We got the bowling alley, and when the kid is up, the bumpers come out. And that's what I hear you saying is, no, you can't get a gutter ball. We're keeping you safe so that you get the result that you're looking for.
Yeah. Other things that kind of fit into that same area is, my hero, from not as a person, is a bit of an ass, but in terms of what he did as an innovator, is Steve Jobs. No one can argue his pedigree as someone that really understood simplicity and attention to detail and interface design like Steve Jobs. Now, he may never have been a programmer. He may have been a real jerk to work for. I probably wouldn't, one of us would have ended up dead if we worked together, I'm sure. But it doesn't mean I don't admire the hell out of what he did. And one of the things that he preached always was this concept of simple sophistication. That is a dichotomy, because simple and sophisticated are two different opposite ends of the spectrum. And the iPhone was the first thing that he really deployed. And he deployed a lot of things before it, all the way back to the OSs and everything. But, mainstream, his first massive mainstream success at demonstrating simple sophistication was the iPhone. It was both at the same time simple and elegant and sophisticated. And it played in that dichotomy of giving you the simplicity of what you wanted, where you wanted it, but the sophistication to go deeper and customize and add apps and do all these other things that you could do if you were the power user that wanted to go deep down that rabbit hole. So you had the sophistication available to you, but you also had the simplicity that made it easy to consume and enjoy and engage with. So everything I do from a design standpoint, man, my team has a love-hate relationship with me. Sometimes they love me, sometimes they hate me, and generally they just love to hate me. Sometimes they hate to love me, but it's I am very similar to Jobs in that regard. I just am a stickler for attention to detail. I will nitpick on certain things. I will just refine. We've had one feature that I have refined it about 40 times now. And the team calls me the click Nazi, because every single click in the app I scrutinize. Is this absolutely necessary? Do we have to have this? All of this comes from best practices. All of this comes from using the platform that we sell. We're not just a marketing company. We are a company for marketers by marketers, and it shows in everything we do. When you go into the send email broadcast screen, okay, what's the likelihood you're either going to send to a list or you're going to schedule it out at a time in the future? It's either going to go now or it's going to be sent out and scheduled in the future. Why should I have to click on the icon to expand the calendar? And many platforms, that's 3 or 4 clicks to even get there. I eliminate all of those, all of them. As soon as you come into the send broadcast, right there, it's got the list. It remembers the last list you sent to, because that's what you're going to do 99% of the time. And if you want to schedule something, the calendar is already there. It's already opened. It's already ready for you to just tap one time on the date. It remembers your preferred send times and uses your favorites if you want. If you don't, if you want it to be random, it doesn't. It's up to you. So you get this dichotomy of simple yet sophisticated all at the same time. And that is the approach that I bring to every single thing that we do in the platform and really in all of the software platforms that I've designed and built over the years. I always focus on making it as simple as possible. And to bastardize a quote from Steve Jobs, he said, that it makes something as simple as you possibly can, and then make it simple, and then make it simpler. Then simplify it. Right. It just would go further and further and further. And that's what I do. I release something and I go back and I use it every day because I'm sending out daily emails. Ben's sending out daily emails. We're sending out a lot of content. And so we're getting a lot of reps in. If you're not getting your reps in, don't worry. We're kind of making up for you. We're getting a lot of reps in, sending a lot of emails. And every time we do, we're nitpicking the interface. Every single time we use it. It would sure be nice if it did this. It would be nice if it did that. And each of those refinements comes further and further and further in. The one screen in our platform where you send a broadcast email, this is the most important screen in the entire platform. And it has had at least 60 or 70 revisions of that screen in just little tiny refinements and improvements like this that we've added along the way.
So do you think that by doing, I'm going to call it baked in best practices, they're already there, the platform actually works better or works great for either a really experienced user or a new user, because you guys are keeping them safe while giving them the opportunity to push the boundaries? Do both people equally benefit from the platform, or is it better for one or the other?
Yeah, absolutely. Both benefit because I do this in a manner in which that allows you to flip switches and turn things on or off. So as an example, one of the things that we do, there's a preview window that's on the screen. And as you're pasting in the email or typing in the email, however you do it, when a link appears in the email, in the background, the system automatically goes out to that URL and it tries to load the page, and it generates an image of what the page looks like, and then takes that image and throws it on the screen for you so that you can see that the site has been tested, validated, and previewed, right? Why do I need to click on a stupid button that says, check my links, make sure I'm not looking stupid? Why can't the system just automatically not make you look stupid by, as you're typing in the background, go out and validate your links for you? So we do that, right? And that preview is something that is a default feature, but yet you can turn it off, right? It's the protection, but maybe you don't want it. Maybe it interrupts your flow of how you write and you don't want to see the image there. We even make a big stop sign and a red thing if it has a broken link. We do things to, here's a perfect example, and this applies to both beginners and experienced users alike. And that is that we assume that you're a marketer. We assume that you should be sending a link in your emails. And if you send an email and you click send and there's no link in it, it will warn you. It doesn't prevent you from sending it. You can still say, yes, I'm an idiot. I did forget a link and I still want to send it out. And it'll let you do it. But it is giving you that heads up and a catching, and it's assuming that you're a marketer because we're a platform of marketers for marketers, right? So we assume that you want a link in there and say, hey, just notice you don't have a link in your content. Do you want to add one in, or is it good to go, right? Whatever the wording is. But that's just another way that the system is looking out for both beginners and experienced as well. So you have those controls. You have the ability to turn on and off certain features if you like them, if you don't like them. The way that I use BerserkerMail is quite a bit different than the way Ben uses it, because we have so many different customizable features and preferences that we are able to turn on and off.
That is fascinating. I'm just sitting here saying, I think that this could actually make me a better marketer.
I think that it's more than that in a way, because yes, that's part of it. But I actually think that it, in some ways, is a difference maker between success and failure for certain people at certain points in their career. Because in that beginning stage, when you're trying to get things going and you're learning, you remember, we all remember when we first got started, how complicated everything was. And for some people, that is the difference between pushing through and just giving up. And so my philosophy has always been, let's reduce that barrier down and make it as accessible as possible, as usable, friendly, as, configurable as possible. And also the configurable part is really important because as you grow in your skill set, you want the software to be able to grow with you. And if you don't need those reminders and you want to turn this off and you want to move faster, the system allows you to do that. So growing with that user learning curve as well, I think is equally important.
Fascinating, man. All right. What do you have coming up for us next time, Troy?
Well, we talked about best practices, and the follow-up is perfect because we're going to go into the best practice of all best practices when it comes with email, and that is daily, consistent frequency with your email. And we're going to go into that, baby, and have some fun.
Man, we'll see. I might come out contrarian on that one with you. I can't wait to get into that. All right, brother. Well, I dig it. Thank you for sharing some of those best practices with us. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. That is a wrap for this episode.
To get a free BerserkerMail test drive with no credit card required, go to startmytestdrive.com. From there, you can play around inside the platform without pressure. Load up emails and campaigns to see how simple the interface is, and get comfy with everything before deciding to join. That's startmytestdrive.com.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.